Put on some hush puppy shoes. Let's play it one time. Woo!
We're going to start off by talking with Scott about one of his favorite bands. I think that would be fair to say. Would that not be right? Yes, Scott?
They were a big favorite back in my younger days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back in the early 70s, mid 70s, Yes was one of the biggest things around. They had a big fan base. They got huge commercially. They were critically very well received. Just a powerhouse, but their history is a mess. You know, they're still around. They've pretty much always been around in one form or another since their founding in 1969. They hit their peak early in their career in the early 1970s and the mid 1970s with the Yes album, Fragile, Close to the Edge. But even through that whole process, there were a revolving door. The Yes album was their third record and it was their first record with a new guitar player, Steve Howe. Fragile was their follow-up, a big, huge hit in 1972. I'll be the roundabout, the words make you out, spend the day going, call the morning, driving through the sun, in and out the valley. Well, that one came along with a replacement of the keyboard player with Rick Wakeman. And then we had a miracle where Yes recorded Fragile and Close to the Edge with the same lineup. That's only happened in the last 50 years. That's only happened 2 or 3 times, I think, where the same lineup did consecutive albums with them. But anyway, let's fast forward here to 1979. Lead singer Jon Anderson, keyboard player Rick Wakeman decided they wanted to go off and do their own thing. So this left Chris Squire, who now is the only original member of the band left, just a decade after the band was formed. Bass player Chris Squire, Steve Howe, guitar player Alan White, the drummer. Now they're left without their lead singer and their keyboard player. So they go out and recruit a couple of buggles. Video killed the radio star, the first video that MTV ran, right? 2 guys named Jeff Downs and Trevor Horn, who were the buggles. Well, they got recruited to come in and replace Anderson and Wakeman. This was a big change for this band. I mean, Jon Anderson was such a key, vital member of this band. He was the lead songwriter. He was the front guy, and he just had this very distinctive voice and vocal delivery, and was a true front man. He was the face of this band. And now he was gone, and they just became this group of fairly anonymous players. I mean, fans knew who these guys were, but the general public, they don't know what Steve Howe looks like. They don't know what Chris Squire looks like. They don't know what Alan White looks like. And they don't know what Buggles look like either. But they recorded this album in 1980 called Drama, and it was pretty good. It was fine. It wasn't anything like, what they put out in their peak years, but you still had Steve Howe's distinctive guitar style in here. You still had Chris Squire's very distinctive Rickenbacker bass playing going on here. But it was a little bit of different sound just because it was a different lead singer. I am a camera. I am a camera. Take heart. I could never let you go. Well, now the band says, nah, they didn't really like that direction too much, so they disbanded. They all decided to go and try some different things. Squire drummer Alan White. In the meantime, they spent a couple of years working together and trying to put together a band, and they did actually put together a band with the original Yes keyboard player Tony Kaye and the South African guitar player and singer named Trevor Rabin or Rabin. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. I'm going to say Rabin. They put together a band called Cinema in 1982, and they got a recording contract. They started putting together an album. Then somebody had the idea, well, Jon Anderson's not doing anything. They had a couple of songs they thought that Jon Anderson would sound really good at. So they decided to bring Anderson in to do a couple of guest lead vocals on this album that they were putting together as a band, Cinema. So what happens, they get together and they record these things, and the record label said, you know what? This needs to be a Yes album. There's enough feedback from Yes. We can sell this as a Yes album. Nobody's going to buy an album by a band called Cinema, but they'll buy an album by a band called Yes. And so they released this album in 1983 titled 90125. And what happens, it becomes the biggest commercial success. Owner of a Lonely Heart became Yes's only #1 single. And all of a sudden they became this very successful band again with a little bit of a different lineup. But now all of a sudden, Jon Anderson again is the lead singer of Yes, just by default because of record company decisions, right? So they continue along for a while. They tour a lot. They still have keyboard players coming and going. They have guitar players coming and going. Well, in 2008, they were getting ready to go out on tour, and Jon Anderson got really, really sick with a respiratory illness. But this went on for a year or two, and the rest of the guys, by this time, Steve Howe has now come back into the band. Squire's still around, White's still around. Trevor Horn is now their producer. He's not performing anymore. But whoever these guys are, I've kind of lost track of who's in a band now and who's not. But in 2008, after sitting on their heels for about a year or so, waiting for Anderson to heal, and Anderson is still not getting any better, so they decide we want to go out on tour. We need to get this thing back going. And they hire a guy who was the lead singer of a Yes tribute band, who kind of sounded a little bit like Jon Anderson. He sang the same way because he's learned all these songs already with this tribute band. So they hire him to go out on the road with them. His name is I want to make sure I get it right. His name is Benoit David. If you go do a Google search on Benoit David
Benoit.
Well, yeah, you come up with David Benoit, who's a jazz pianist, right? Well, you also in a Google search, you find a David Benoit who is a soccer star somewhere in Europe. But then you also find a Benoit David who is a pro wrestler.
Now, see, it would have been ideal if they actually hired the pro wrestler. I would have paid money to see that.
Yeah, but they hired this guy in around 2009, 2008, somewhere in there, named Benoit David. They also at the same time get a new keyboard player named Oliver Wakeman, who's the son of Rick Wakeman. And they go on a tour for a little while, and it's a successful tour. They go into the studio about 2011 and record this album called Fly From Here with Benoit David. I started to say David Benoit, with Benoit David as lead singer. I never heard the album, okay? And this was the only album that Benoit David recorded with him, because he all of a sudden developed a respiratory illness and he had to drop out of the band because of his health issues. I went back and looked for this record because I wanted to listen to it, talking about this, because I never heard it. You can't find this record anywhere. It's been deleted from their catalog. Trevor Horn was the producer of this album. They went back in 2018 or 2019, re-recorded this album with Trevor Horn on lead vocals to replace Benoit David's lead vocals. So I can't tell you, I cannot tell you how Benoit David worked out on this. I've read some reviews. Some reviews say that, yeah, he does a pretty good job. All Music liked it. Other reviews I read liked it, but for some reason, Steve Howe decided to remove that chapter from their history and make it go away. You can't find it. You can find a re-recorded album called Fly From Here Revisited or something like that. But anyway, so what do? They go out when Benoit David gets sick. By this time, Anderson is healed, but he's upset now. It causes a big rift between him and Steve Howe, and they swore to never work together again. And still to this day, they still say, no, we're never working together again. So now they replace Benoit David with a guy named Jon Davison, which that name sounds pretty close to Jon Anderson. Jon Davison, both of them spell their first name Jon, right? And Jon Davison sounds a whole lot like Jon Anderson. We're still in that same track, still trying to make the same kind of sound, now trying with a different singer. And that happened. He joined them in 2012. They recorded a few albums with this guy, met on tours with them.
I'll be the roundabout, the words we're making on and out. I'll spend the day, you're mine. Calling, driving through the sound, even in the valley.
And Jon Davison is currently their current singer. And I've listened to a couple of the Jon Davison albums. And, by this time, my feeling is that this band is just putting out product now. They don't have a whole lot to say. And it's essentially just Steve Howe, now Jeff Downs, the old Buggle. Now he's back on keyboards. A guy named Billy Sherwood, who's been in and out of the band over the course of the years. Well, he replaced Chris Squire when Squire died in 2016. And they're just still out there, still trying to make the same kind of music as they've always had. And I guess they're doing okay. They're still touring. They're still making money touring. They're still selling albums. They had one come out last year called The Quest, which I reviewed on Geezerology at that point. And my criticism of it was that this would have been good if Steve Howe would have just stopped trying to make everything still be like Yes and just start a new band. But for business reasons, I can understand for commerce reasons why he doesn't do that. They've been chasing that Jon Anderson sound since the day that he left that band, and it's just become product. It's like there's nothing new to say. It's just the same old stuff over and over and over again.
I think, especially given Trevor Horn's background in technology, that this is a prime opportunity for the confluence of artificial intelligence and holographic work to kind of come together. So you could actually have the holographs of the old classic lineup, and then you could artificially generate songs that would replicate Yes types of stuff, and then you just jam them together and then tour it. Or you have a couple of different locations where people could go and buy tickets, like the whole ABBA experience, where you could go and watch the band, which was not actually there, replicate its prime years, in a specially designed space, and it would seem like it was real. So I think that we're getting there. And
Well,
I think
I'll
yes, it's a perfect test bed for this kind of.
I'll tell you who's sure to be getting there is the Rolling Stones.
Oh my God! How do we actually know that they are not holographically performing?
One quick throw in here. I understand that the Stones are working. They've got some new songs. They're going to be. They're either working on or plan to release later this year.
Okay.
Oh my God! Jesus wept.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I need to hear. Dan, I feel bad already. Oh my God. The last thing I knew should yeah. Oh, guys.
Hey.
I have we're putting together our best work since Dirty Work. It's gonna be great. Oh.
Well, put down your Playboy, put on some hush puppy shoes. Let's play it one time. Woo!